Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. Today we're at property address 16594 Southwest Jean-Louis Road, or Jean-Louis Road, depending on your French flair. Anyhow, we're checking the overall condition of the unserviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Currently located on the right side of the house. That's as you face the home from the street, or face the front door from the road. Right next to the air conditioning unit. Nice big 4-inch ABS clean out. Alright, there's your air conditioning unit. Clean out, maybe 3 feet away from it. Sits right in front of a vent too. Anyhow, we're going to check the overall condition and serviceability of the line. Water's running. We are zeroed out. Off we go. Let's hope for no construction debris in the line. That is the main culprit these new construction houses deal with, by and large. Especially ever since the pandemic years, that for whatever reason, everyone lost their skilled labor. People didn't know what to do. Ended up with a lot of gravel getting dumped down sewer pipes. Almost 100% of the lines I did for those 2 years required hydrojetting. So we've gone through a couple areas thus far with some standing water. We're going to take a look at that when it's drained out, but these look like the kind of spots here so far that are going to probably drain out to something like a 1/16 of an inch. My camera is upside down right now. Water line's at the top of the screen currently. Thus far, even with a sink running, that water line is barely getting up above somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch of water. So by the time we drain this out, I think we're going to be left over some pretty rinky-dink looking standing water, honestly. But we shall see. Someone gooped a little extra pipe glue in here. Looks like a little bit of gravel and whatnot got into the line. That we will revisit too. Just transitioned there to 3034 PVC, and right up ahead here is the main lateral connection. Alright, we're going to go locate the camera head really quick here while the pipe drains off to see where things go. Then we'll pull back and take a second look at everything. But as it relates to bellies on new construction, I tend to get a lot nitpickier on new construction than I do your average used home. After I've cambered about almost 25,000 lines over the 13 years I've been doing this, and what I kind of developed over those years is the 5-foot belly rule. That's where I start to consider repairs on your average lived-in home. 5-foot section of pipe with at least 1 inch of water that's static with no water running at all. And I only recommend repairs on those in particular circumstances. Usually it's when they're in older pipe materials with much rougher pipe walls, where you get the coupling effect of debris getting slowed down by the standing water and rough pipe walls snagging onto that stuff. Plastic pipe does not have that same problem. So generally when I'm recommending a repair on a newer line using that criteria, it's only when it's very close proximity to the house and or underneath the home, where it's at a much higher likelihood in resulting into an actual backup. New construction, I dial it back a bit. Partially, it's new and it should look new. But when we're talking stuff like 1/16 of an inch of water, I mean, that's the kind of belly I would hardly even talk about on any other era of house. What I usually recommend in circumstances like this, we'll see how these drain out, but most likely they're going to drain out to a very minor amount. What I usually recommend you do is rescope the line around 10 months into that 1-year warranty to check for any progression. Generally speaking, bellies usually occur almost instantaneously after a line is buried, and usually are not progressive beyond the first few days they're in the ground. Usually they settle almost instantly after being buried. But usually what causes progression is when you have bad pipe joints that are sucking dirt through them and eroding the support out from underneath the sewer line. So as long as we don't have any bad pipe joints or anything in here, the settling you're seeing here is likely all it's going to be, but it is worth taking a second look. 9 times out of 10, if not better than that, it's more like 9.9 times out of 10. When I come back almost a year later, usually everything looks exactly the same, but I do catch a handful that progress, and if we see progression at that point, I'd ask the builder to fix it, because you don't know if it's going to continuously move or what. So anyhow, we're going to go locate here real fast. We'll see what we got here in a second. Alrighty, well, the line terminates at the rear alleyway where the driveway goes out to. So in this case, I'm going to kind of switch things around. I'm going to describe it as if it's probably just easier to visualize. If you're standing in the alleyway facing the garage door, the line ends up crossing the curb. I have to go back and look, but it's about 4 or 5 feet to the left of the driveway. You'll see an S. This one may have a double S. It's either an S or a double S there. If you see SD, that stands for storm drain. We're looking for an S or a double S. But anyway, and it is curb stamped. I just looked at that. I forgot which one it was. They use both of those. That just stands for sewer or sanitary sewer. But that's right where the line crosses the street curb into the road. Transition joint looks good there, all sealed up. Again, you got a little excess pipe glue there, a little bit of it might be fine bits of gravel. It's kind of hard to say what the little bumpy texture is in it. It's very, very small. The camera blows it up and makes it look much bigger than it is in reality. And being that you're on a hard vertical dive like this, that would have essentially zero effect on anything going through the line. Does a really hard dive there, in fact. And I'm glad to see they didn't belly it out at the bottom. Usually that's what you end up with when you do a hard nose dive like that. It's not the most ideal configuration to utilize. It's very easy to get a belly at the bottom of them, and they usually aren't. They really don't generally amount to much, but sometimes they result in an offset joint, not just a belly. It's hard to see exactly where this dissipates off. It's somewhere here around 37. It tapers off to such a small amount, it's hard to see. But it's around 37 feet or so where this last belly here dissipates. I mean, I can so far hardly even call this thing a belly. And it's actually closer to 36 feet. My camera sloshes water out of the belly and kind of moves it forward. It makes it tricky on these tiny ones like this. Yeah, that so far there is a long ways away from repair worthy, even for new construction. That's about a 32nd of an inch of water there. That little water has almost no bearing on functionality whatsoever. Not unless you are... The only thing you would get consistently hanging up in standing water that minor is if you're putting a lot of cooking oil and grease down the line. You'd have to be doing quite a lot of that. Cooking oil and grease will harden up when it hits any amount of standing water. Whether it's a 32nd of an inch or 3 inches, it cools down fairly rapidly, but it kind of floats to the top of the water and sticks to the sidewalls. So, and you'd have to be doing that at a pretty hefty rate in order to see much build up there with as small as this thing is. So it's from about 25 feet to around 36 feet approximately. Yeah, see, I can't even get the water to come up above the bottom of the camera lens again, which is right now on the top of the screen. You're between a 32nd and a 16th of an inch by and large. That doesn't even appear to hit a 1/4 inch there. So as it sits, in my opinion, even for new construction, that's too minor to require repairs. I would take a second look at it at about 1 year. You got what looks like a little bit of excess pipe glue there in the flow line. My camera doesn't even scrape over it. It goes over effortlessly. It's very small. That's a pretty common thing to see on new construction especially. Anyway, in bellies, when you've got that hard nose dive like that at the end of the line, there's a lot of grade there that didn't get utilized. That's the other reason, ideally, you get a more gentle gradation. You're less likely to end up with it. You can put a harder pitch on all the pipe prior to this point, where it's a little less likely to result in the belly. But as tiny as that thing is, either way, this is not a situation where I'd recommend that be corrected. Not unless we saw progression take place. And at this rate, we are now back inside the home in the crawl space. The rest of that piping there is exposed piping. That's stuff you can look at with your eyes there. So once again, little bit of standing water here. And that's all we've got in this line is a little bit. This spot here, it's about 2 feet in length. Yeah, from 2 to 4 feet. And once again, not even enough water to come above the bottom of the camera lens, which sits about a 1/4 inch off the bottom of the pipe. So again, there you're about a 1/16 of an inch or so. And that's what I'll write these up as. About a 1/16 of an inch, both of them at their worst point, approximately. Anyhow, all the pipe we've scoped here, all of it is intact and in good condition, clean of any construction debris. Standing water you've got right now is affecting flow so little that I would write this up as a properly functioning sewer line. But I do recommend re-scoping it at about 9-10 months into that 1-year warranty. You want to let the line sit for a moment, long enough that if it's going to do any movement or shifting, you want to give it long enough to actually be able to see it. You don't want to come back here in a month and it just isn't worth doing. But most likely, we're not going to see any changes whatsoever. I'm just pushing back out here really quick just to see where this is located at, just for some reference. All right, so where the belly starts at, it starts on this side, on the, what would you call this here? Side yard, side of the fence line, not on the driveway side. Most of it is on the driveway or alley side of the fence. About 4 foot deep here. And that location of that is all purely under dirt, which is nice. In the event that does progress, which I think is unlikely, the beauty of that is you're not having to tear up a driveway to deal with it or anything like that. Anyhow, we're gonna go ahead and roll the camera out of the line here. As we sit here today, we have good flow all the way to the main. All the pipe we just scoped there is in good condition. Sewer line is functioning properly at this time. But do take another look at it. You know, and what I usually recommend is, even if we see that progress from, let's say, a 1/16 of an inch to, you know, a 1/2 of an inch, for instance, which still is something I generally never recommend repairs on. At about a 1/2 inch of standing water, truly a 1/2 inch or so, is where I start to consider repairs on new construction. I dial it back a bit for new stuff. But if we see progression to that extent, I would ask for it to be corrected, because you don't know within reason as to what point it's going to stop settling. You know, for all you know, it'll slowly progress to an inch or more over time. So that's why that's the hard part with new construction, is you don't have 10 or 15 years or so of the line being in the ground to know what it's going to do all said and done. But generally speaking, that's the most it's ever going to settle generally, unless there's some other factor playing into things. So most likely, if we come back here in 10 months, it's going to look just like it does now.